Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the RevelX studio, and welcome to another RevelX online webinar. Before I continue, can you hear as well? If you could could you drop off a yes in the chat box so we can see that the sound is clear? Yes. Rien, Floris, Kees, thank you. Okay, then we can move on. Again, welcome and thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Rob Nouwens. I'm the head of marketing and sales within RevelX. And for today, the webinar host as well. And with me is Marc Douma.
Good morning.
Co-founder and partner of RevelX. He will be the main presenter of today. And Marc will introduce himself in a bit. For everyone who doesn't know RevelX, we are a management consultancy firm. We are specialized in strategic innovation, so we help our customers realizing growth by designing and implementing growth and innovation strategies. So we have a lot of knowledge and information to share with you today. In one of the most popular webinars out of our webinar series, that is how to become a best-in-class webinar.
Innovator, not webinar.
Oh, sorry, innovator, best-in-class innovator. Marc will do that. The presentation will last for 30-35 minutes, so it's a lot of time available for your questions as well. So please drop them in the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen, and we make sure we cover them in part 2 of this webinar. We also will introduce some poll questions for you, so we can share your opinion about certain questions we ask in the poll. So make sure you make use of that. And at the end of the webinar, we have a little surprise, so we will come back on that later on, so stay tuned. It's time to hand over to you, Marc.
Okay.
So, Marc, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rob, and welcome again, everybody, to this webinar on becoming a best-in-class innovator. It is a rather topical theme in these bizarre times, in which we have concerns about our health and the economy, and they are basically dominating the headlines. Although today, I think much of the attention will go to the US elections, which is very exciting indeed. But at the same time, it's also encouraging to see how disruptive times like we are living currently in can accelerate innovation. And more than ever, innovation is crucial for our society to survive. In this webinar, we will discuss what it takes to become a best-in-class innovator. What are the characteristics of innovative companies, and which steps can you take to become a best-in-class innovator yourself? We're not going to discuss so much about how you make innovation happen. We are going to discuss how you make innovation happen, and not so much which innovation areas you should focus on. So it's more about how you become an innovator and not so much which typical innovation areas. Very briefly about myself, as Rob already said, I'm a co-founder at RevelX. 6 years ago, we started RevelX with 3 other shareholders, and we have one simple mission, and that's basically to help our clients to realize growth through strategic innovation. And essentially, that's what I've been doing in the past 25 years, and that still remains relevant, especially in these very disruptive times. And well, we've been using this picture for quite some time, and it's very topical, and it also holds one of the favorite quotes of my colleague Matthijs: any industry can and will be disrupted. And of course, what's happening in the airline industry, well, it's unprecedented, and I don't think anybody would have predicted that a year ago. And now the disruption is coming from a disease that has gone viral. But if you think about it, disruption has been going on for quite some time already in the airline industry. And that has basically become with EasyJet, one of the pioneers with a very competitive business model, and Ryanair soon followed. But today, innovation or disruption is actually coming from a whole different angle. And the airlines, well, obviously, they have to brace for the impact of a digital economy where flying out for a single meeting is no longer, well, normal. And suddenly, Zoom, Teams, Google Hangouts may have become the disruptor for the industry. And just as an example, we've recently completed a strategic assignment for one of our clients, an international company present in, I think, about 15 countries. And the whole assignment has been done online, including workshops with their top 20 members. And I haven't met anybody in person other than in Teams. So that's just an example of how the world has changed, because last year, or in 2019, we would have had many meetings with all these people in live sessions, a lot of flying around, and that's just basically not happening anymore. And there are many other examples that we can mention, but I think the message or the common thread is quite simple. Innovation is in the end what makes the difference between the leaders and the followers, or you can say between the disruptors and the disrupted. Now, innovation often has something kind of magical to it. And people often think that, you have to be that genius inventor, like a Jobs or a Musk, or longer ago, Henry Ford with his T model. But in our view, innovation is certainly not rocket science, provided that you understand the characteristics of best-in-class innovators. And of course, if you're willing to adapt the innovation best practices within your organization. And that is exactly why we've developed the Innovation Readiness Benchmark in 2018. Well, that benchmark, and we will come back to that later on, is basically an open online self-assessment for companies to assess their innovation power. And we've identified 35 best practices that are focused on 7 areas that you find here in the middle. And in addition to that, we also have 12 drivers for disruption and 5 KPIs on which you can assess your own innovation performance. And we've started, as I said, in 2018, and by now more than 150 companies have already participated. And we're quite proud of that, of course. And it's also interesting to see that they are ranging from very large corporates, like, for example, IKEA, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Van der Lande, one of our clients as well, Philips. Well, you can see the list over here, but also many smaller startups and scale-ups. And this means we now have a very interesting data set that provides insight into the differences between weaker and stronger innovators. And well, before discussing those insights, we'd like to do a short benchmark ourselves among the participants in this meeting. And Rob will now show that poll on the right-hand side, if all is well. And you can answer, and the simple question is, how would you rate your own innovation performance? Ranging from 1, quite poor, if you're quite honest, not good enough, okay-ish, pretty good, or absolutely best in class if you're very modest. Well, we can see the answers coming now. 40, 50%. Nobody thinks it's absolutely best in class. Might be a bit Dutch as well, because we always try to be modest, of course. Yeah, I think we are now at a point where most people who want to answer have already answered it. And well, the picture I think is quite clear. Most of you think it's okay-ish. 19% thinks it's not good enough, and only 6% thinks it's quite poor. Nobody thinks it's absolutely best in class. And this is basically also what we see happening in our benchmark. And if we're honest, okay-ish is, well, it's not bad. But if you really want to be a strong innovator, then okay-ish is actually not good enough, if we're honest. And that's basically also what our benchmark data shows. And it's a similar picture, like I said. So you're in that sense a quite representative group, because what we see in our benchmark data is that 65% of the companies thinks that the disruption risk for their business is 7 or higher on a 1 to 10 point scale, which is significant. But only 25%, and that's almost similar to the 29% we just saw in our own poll, raised their own innovation performance as good. And at the same time, 47% does not have a well-defined innovation strategy. And that's a bit concerning, because if you think disruption is going to happen, 7 or higher on a 10-point scale, then you would expect to have a good innovation strategy. Well, that's sort of the concerning note. On the other hand, our benchmark data is also hopeful. So there is hope. And we always like to look at the glass half full rather than half empty, of course, Because what we've done with all the data we have, we plotted the average score on the 35 best practices on the x-axis in this chart, and mapped that against the innovation performance rated on 5 criteria. And well, what you basically see here is that, and we can of course make some remarks on how scientific this is with my own scientific background, but I think the overall trend is clear. The higher you rank on the innovation best practices, the higher you score on your innovation performance. So it does have merit to invest in applying and adopting those best practices. So that's basically, our key theme for today as well. Now, as I already said, we have 35 best practices allocated to these 7 areas in the middle. We have less than an hour, so we're not going to discuss all 35 best practices, but what we will do is give some insights from our benchmark for the main categories, and also to give you some examples and some practical tips. We're going to start with innovation strategy. And more we see at our clients that in addition to having a good corporate strategy, which I think everybody is aware of, that you need to have that, you should also have a solid innovation strategy. And our benchmark shows that that is indeed a good thing to do, because we see a clear difference between what we've called the strong performers versus the weak performers in terms of having a well-defined innovation strategy. And these numbers are all on a 1 to 5 point scale. So the strong performers say, well, on a 1 to 5 point scale, we are 4 in having a well-defined innovation strategy, whereas the weak performers only rank themselves at 2.8. And there's also a striking difference in the amount or the degree to which companies invest in long-term projects. Strong performers clearly outperform the weak performers in that sense. And then the question is, of course, what defines a good innovation strategy? Well, we have adapted the 10 types of innovation framework from Keeley into our own 9 growth tactics framework, which is basically a useful structure for developing an innovation strategy. And what you basically, how you can use this model is that in the end, most companies still focus a lot on developing better products. So it's a very strong product focus we still see at many companies. Whereas if you are really innovative, you innovate in all these areas. So you think about different profit models, about different brand positioning, about building platforms, about innovating your processes, about different engagement models with your customers. And a good example of that is the bicycle industry. We've been working with Accel Group, which is the holding company of many brands. Batavus and Sparta are well-known Dutch brands, but they also have international brands. And they have really been a trendsetter with their traditional e-bikes. I think Sparta, the older people in this webinar may still remember the Sparta Met, but later on they developed the traditional e-bike. But Accel also basically invented the electrical mountain bike, which was unheard of at that time. It was their brand Highbike who did that. And just within a few years, they built that into a 100 million euro business, and very profitable, by the way, as well. But we saw many new entrants coming into the industry, like Stella with Canyon and Decathlon, and they innovated in other areas of the business model, like the distribution channels, the customer engagement models, or the service they provided. And a company like Canyon, for example, which basically did not exist, within 10 years built a 200 million euro business by offering a fully online distribution model. And then we, of course, have the many bicycle sharing plans in the larger cities, which are a fundamentally different business model focused on using bicycles instead of owning them. So that meant for Accel that product innovation alone was no longer sufficient. Well, the blueprint for that was presented in 2017 with the new group strategy that we developed together with Accel. And today, a couple of years later, they have implemented experience centers, hybrid distribution models. They have their own online platform. They have participations in new ventures, and also their supply chain, which is traditionally an Achilles heel in the bicycle industry, has been fundamentally transformed. So I think that's a good example of where product innovation itself is not enough anymore, and you really need to focus on the other areas as well. As said, so having an innovation strategy is becoming more important, and that's why we developed the innovation strategy canvas. It's basically a one-page summary that you can make of your innovation strategy, and we have a download of that. Rob will now make that available, so that comes up on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you want to, you can click on the download button and basically, have a go at developing a first draft of your own innovation strategy. And do reach out to us, of course, if you have any questions on that. So then you have an innovation strategy and you have an innovation roadmap and a portfolio of projects that cover all the innovation types and horizons. So we're in pretty good shape already, but then you still have to manage it. And that often proves to be quite hard. And we'll get to the benchmark insights in a minute. But first, a question to you. How well do you manage your own innovation portfolio? And if you're a consultant, please answer the question for your recent or current client. Well, we can see the answers coming in. Not everybody's got, but we are still some questions coming or some answers coming in. Well, the good news is nobody says we don't manage it. So that's at least good news. And again, here it's a lot of the sort of the number 3 answer. We try, but we could do better. And we have about 30%, 25% of the companies or the people present in this call who say, well, we do it rather good. And one person who says, no, we don't. And that is basically also what we see in our benchmark data. And interestingly enough, the degree to which the innovation portfolio is managed is one of the lowest ranking areas in our benchmark data. So a lot of companies are actually struggling with that. So for example, 61% of the companies in our benchmark say, well, our innovation projects are not based on solid business cases. Well, that's quite concerning because there is a lot of money being invested in those projects, and well, basically they're sort of, we hope that in the end they will deliver something, but it's not founded by a solid business case. And perhaps even more worrying is that 71% of the companies say, well, we do not manage the performance of our innovations against predefined targets. Well, and of course, it's not easy. We know that from experience. We've been working since 2014 with BDR TEMEA. That's the top 3 worldwide in heating and climate solutions for both businesses and residential customers. You may know REMEA as their Dutch brand, and I also know we have 2 participants from this company in this webinar. So welcome, a special welcome to them. But in 2014, we basically had a discussion with them about the innovation performance and that the projects were taking too long. And well, then you suffer from what we sometimes call the peanut butter problem, which is basically spreading out a thin layer of peanut butter across a big sandwich, and you have limited resources spread too thin over too many projects, and in the end, too little is achieved. Whereas innovation in this industry is very important with the whole energy transition going on. So what we did in close cooperation with their team, we first streamlined the innovation process and also introduced a tighter stage gating. And we started a project with a somewhat sinister name called Project Kill. It doesn't sound very friendly, but the basic aim of that was to clean up the portfolio and remove all the projects that were not going to deliver a serious added value, or some of the hobby projects as well from the funnel. And basically that was all aimed to create focus on the projects that did offer added value. But you can imagine with 400 people working in R&D, that is quite a challenging task. And still today, the whole industry, I think, is investing a lot in developing new renewable solutions. So also in 2020, the importance of innovation is still very high for companies like BDR TEMEA. But if you talk about innovation, then agility is inevitably a word that comes up. And it's also a bit of a buzzword. Part of our benchmark is focused on agility. Well, the good news is that most companies, understand the importance of agility. So 82% already works in multidisciplinary teams, and around half of the companies indicate that they work in an agile manner in their innovation projects. And when we talk about agility, there are basically three methodologies that are important, which are design thinking, lean startup, and agile. And it's impossible to discuss them all in depth here, but I thought it would be good to summarize them very briefly, because sometimes quite often they get mixed up. Starting with design thinking. And the essence of design thinking is that every innovation process must start with a fundamental understanding of the future challenges of your customer or client. And the innovation obviously needs to address those challenges. So that's design thinking, in one sentence. Lean startup adds to that your critical hypotheses about these challenges or your solutions are validated with minimal viable products as soon as possible. So you don't start investing for years in new products, but you basically test them as soon as possible with your customers or clients, and that you pivot your MVP when the hypotheses are rejected. Agile is basically about developing how you develop those MVPs, and that's in short sprints with multidisciplinary teams that learn from each sprint. So these three methodologies together, if they're all implemented well, really help you to come to a much more agile innovation process compared to the old waterfall approach that takes years to come to a final solution, which then often basically doesn't hit the ground running in the market because the initial hypotheses were not validated good enough in an early stage. So in analogy to the Six Sigma black belt, basically what you would need in your company is a lot of people with what we call an innovation black belt. Again, a poll for all of you, and this is a bit of a personal one. So the question is about you personally. Would you say you would qualify for an innovation black belt? Absolutely, getting there, need to start training. This is good. So we at least, out of the 65% has now answered the question. 6 of you are absolutely convinced that they have the innovation black belt. So congratulations to those people. 15 are well on the way, getting there, and 10 need to start training, which may be the reason for signing up for this webinar. But I think it's interesting to think about it. So, to what extent do I, but also my people, have the right skills and competencies to really work in an innovative way? And if you look at our benchmark, it was quite surprising for us that only a third of the participants in our benchmark indicated that their people are well trained in innovation thinking and tooling. And that's what we still see with the new benchmarks coming in. So that is typically an area where maybe future training and development programs should pay more attention to. What we also saw is that larger companies are doing relatively less here. May also have to do with the way they hire people. I'm not sure about that. Maybe need to look into that. But fortunately, we also have larger companies that do recognize the importance. We've been working with SPIE, which is, I think that's a leading European installation and service company. They have around 7 to 8 billion turnover in Europe. French company from origin, and their leadership team fully acknowledges the importance of innovation, and that innovation is crucial to stay relevant. And what they do, they invest a lot in innovation days. Well, this year, obviously, with the whole COVID situation, will be different. But last year, we had 300 people attending their innovation event in Brussels. They develop an innovation toolkit. We've done that together with them, by the way. They train their managers They're building a network of innovation professionals, very crucial across the various disciplines that they have. And they've also started working with a software platform of Next. It's a company, it's a Dutch-based company, but they basically offer an innovation workflow management tool, fully supporting collaborative working internationally. Next is also one of our partners, and I think they're doing a great job in basically helping companies to adopt these innovation best practices. And as a consequence, I think the whole innovation competence of SPIE has become, has come to a much higher level than a couple of years ago. And I think that's also a good example of showing leadership, because that's really what is required here, a leadership who understands the importance and is willing to make these kind of investments. Even though the short-term results are maybe not direct, because this is also something that takes time to develop. Which brings us to leadership, and that is, well, you would expect it's quite crucial, but what we saw in our benchmark data is that innovation culture and leadership is the biggest differentiator between companies with a strong innovation performance and a weaker innovation performance. And no, you don't have to be Steve Jobs to get this done, although his picture is in the background. But what it really takes as a leader of your business is that you are personally involved. And that, by the way, was the number one differentiator between the strong and the weak performance, the involvement, direct involvement of leaders in innovation projects. You have to create focus, allow people to work on innovations, and also really commit to long-term investments. Because again, innovation, many of them will fail. I think if you have a success rate of 15%, 15%, you're doing already quite well. So you will see a lot of failures, and that's when it really gets tough, and you have to stick to the commitment to investing in the long-term strategy or the long-term innovation strategy, which, by the way, has only become more difficult with these COVID situation, because many companies are now focusing on the short-term results for obvious reasons. But we all know that the only way to get out of the crisis is through fundamental innovation. Which requires leading by example, but also investing in the team. And that means creating diversity. And this may especially be a challenge for larger corporates. And what we often advise our clients is to recruit these three profiles: hipsters, hackers, and hustlers. And I admit that they are not the most common job names. I don't think you will find them posted on the job platforms. But there is a thought behind it, because first of all, you need the creative hipsters who generate ideas and challenges the status quo, especially in the larger corporates where keeping the status quo is often more the norm than in the smaller scale-ups. But you also need hackers, because you can have great ideas, but you need to make them happen. And the hackers, so as a stereotype, are the ones who make it happen and who are willing to draw outside the lines, just shortcut the corner to get to the result quickly. But then you have the solutions, and you still need to sell them, and that's where the hustlers come in. The handy, slick figures who can close creative deals with your customers, who can seduce them and know how to win your customers. And just as a thought, think about your own organization, and are these sort of stereotype profiles represented well enough in your company? A different way of looking at how you build your team, I think. And then, of course, it's all about the mindset, isn't it? And that's what we quite often see, that the difference is made by the mindset of individuals. We've written a book about that, by the way, and my colleagues, Erik de Groot and Matthijs Rosman. It's selling quite well on Amazon and Bol, and it's called DARE. And DARE stands for, well, of course, you have to have a daring mindset. It stands for defiance. So you have to go against the established order. It's about adventure, willing to invest in an adventure and taking risks, not knowing exactly what the outcome will be, but still you do it. but still with a sense of reality. So realism is very important when you think about innovation. It should not all be about big bets, but you have to be realistic as well. And you also have to have endurance. So that's basically keep grinding when the going gets tough, because there will be setbacks in any innovation journey. So do check out our website. You can order a copy of there via our website, and it's, I think, definitely a book worthwhile reading. And well, talking about endurance, the last part of there, because that's really what you need to have to become a best-in-class innovator. Because in the end, this is typically not an overnight journey. You can hire people, you can implement processes, but in the end, it really takes time. Think about the example of SPIE, but also BDO, Tamiya, and all the other companies that we've worked for. It really takes time to really become a best-in-class innovator. Well, and then a good way to start, and you may have guessed this already, so it's a bit of a slight commercial intro here, but still, is to take do the Innovation Readiness Benchmark for your own company. It's openly available, so and we judge like that, of course. It's free of charge, so no strings attached. Rob will now show a pop-up that will take you to the landing page. By the way, if you click on that, the window will open in a new tab in your browser. So my advice would be you can click on it so you know where to find it, but then come back to this screen right away and fill out the benchmark after this webinar. It will take you about 10 minutes, and you will get a personal report of your own assessment. You see some examples at the bottom of this screen. And also a comparison of your own assessment versus the benchmark data of the 150 companies in our benchmark. And if you're interested, I think that might be something for your business. We quite often do what we call an incompany version of the benchmark as well. Which is basically the same set of questions and best practices, but then filled out by, well, ranging from 5 to, we've done it also with 150 people from one company, which gives you a very interesting insight in how people assess your innovation power. So you can use that as a starting point for a dialogue within your management team. If only 5 people fill it out, for example, but you can also use it as a sort of a baseline measurement on how your different countries or business units or functions are assessing themselves on innovation power, which gives you a better feel for where to start working first. Because in the end, I think the benchmark will give you insight in the strengths and weaknesses regarding your innovation. And then the challenge is, of course, to think about where do you need to start first. Is that with developing an innovation strategy? For some companies, that is indeed a good starting point. Or do we first need to think about training our people? Or do we need to start working on portfolio management if we have the innovation strategy but not managing our portfolio? So there are many ways, many starting points that you can choose. And I think that all depends on your own specific situation and challenges. And for that, the benchmark is a great way to get more insight into that. Having said that, we are now and we promised to do about a 30-minute presentation.
Perfect on time.
Yeah, so I think we're good on timing so far. I can imagine that people have questions.
Yeah, there are some questions, so we will get through them right away. Let me.
Okay, this slide.
Yeah, we stop sharing the presentation, so we are on a bigger screen for you as well. Yeah, we are at the end of the webinar, so we are opening up for questions. We do already have some questions, so please send in new ones. If you have questions, I will make the handout available as a download as well, so you can see that. Let me check if that's working properly. I will come back on the handout later. I don't see a handout available right now, so that will be fixed in short time. So Marc, let me run through some questions people asked. The first one is from Paulus, and he is making a sort of a statement. Technology is not the problem, more implementation and culture, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure where Paulus works, but that doesn't really matter. I think in the end, technology, of course, could be a problem, but I would always say that's something you can fix. If you put clever minds to it, you can always find, the best possible technological solution. And you're fully right. In the end, it's all about implementation and having the right mindset. And implementation, first of all, starts with adopting the new technology within your business. We've quite often seen that new technologies are not easily accepted by the people who, for example, have to sell them, because they've been used to selling the old technology, which is not causing any problems, which is well known by their customers, which is well accepted. And when you come up with something new, well, it may have some startup growing pains in the beginning. Customers may not like it, so you have to put in more effort to convince them. So there, for example, implementation could already become quite complicated. I think in the end, the whole thing about culture is, and we also show that in our benchmark insights, is do people have an open mindset? Do they have what we call their mindset? And are they willing to go against the established order, to adopt new technologies? So in that sense, I fully agree with you, Paulus. So it's kind of a question, but more a statement. I fully agree that in the end, having the right culture is crucial.
Okay. I promise you the handout. It's available right now. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen. The next question is from Wouter van Teylingen. Thank you for bringing this question in. Do you believe ISO 56002 innovation management system is a good step forward?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. On the one hand, you could say it's always good to implement these kind of best practices and to have a well-defined innovation process. On the other hand, and I've been working quite a lot with other ISO certificates as well, we all know that you can certify anything if it just sort of tick the boxes, but in the end, then it's all about how do people work with it. And my only concern with these kind of management systems would be about how flexible will you continue to be in your approach. So I think, yes, it helps to offer people a well-defined innovation process. It also supports communication within teams coming from different backgrounds. So it really helps if you have a defined way of working. That's, for example, what we did at BDO in 2015. We really spent a lot of effort in codifying how the innovation or the new product development process looked like and what needed to be achieved in each step, which deliverables and stage gates and so on. And that's really a means of creating the same language between people so that you don't have to spend time on how do we actually do this. And I think it also helps you to make sure that you do all the right things properly. So my answer is a bit, twofold. On the one hand, I would say, yes, it would really help. On the other hand, be aware that it doesn't become too dogmatic. I think that will be my short response to that question. Maybe the question of Misha. I hope I pronounce it correctly. How do you measure high-low performance? E.g. by self-assessment. Well, if you look at our benchmark, we have 5 criteria for measuring the innovation performance, and that's about the time to market, the return on innovation, the relative performance compared to competitors, and as I already said, we don't pretend to be a fully scientific research, so this is a self-assessment. And if I make it very black and white, if you drink 10 beers before making the self-assessment, we will get different answers than not. But I think the whole thing is about, the whole point is about, that the companies in our benchmark have made their own assessment, And yes, you can question that because ideally you would measure it against profit, for example. But setting up such a kind of a benchmark, that's really quite a challenge, also scientifically. So we've opted now for making this a self-assessment tool. At the same time, what you may remember from that chart in the beginning where we plotted the best practice performance on the innovation performance, we did see, and that was quite promising for us, a clear relation between the best practice scores and the innovation performance scores. And I think in the end, but I would say, do have a look at the benchmark yourself. It really helps you to think about, okay, are we actually delivering a good innovation performance? But in answer to your question, it's a self-assessment and not something we measure on sort of bottom line parameters.
Okay, then we have a question, more in a statement as well from Christine. Let's transform that into a question. You forgot the helper, and this during your slide when you talk about the hipsters, the hacksters, and the hustlers. Is it important to add a helper? Yeah, no, that's then we need to think about what is a helper. But I think I get your point because in and yeah, I think it's interesting. We may need to add the helper. It's another H, so that it fits well with the first letters. But I think, Christine, you're right. There is a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes. And again, innovation, it's not like that magic light bulb that pops up. It's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of grinding that needs to be done. And you need a lot of people helping out in innovation projects as well. Then Robert says, what's the relationship between innovation and consistent top profitable sales performer? That relates a bit to the, how do we rate innovation performance? But I think if you think about the definition of innovation, it's not about developing a new solution, developing a new product. We define innovation as developing a new solution or product and bringing that successfully to the market. So in our view, innovation includes the successful go-to-market and actually the actual launch of that. So if you're really good at innovation, then you're not only good at thinking about new products, but you're also very good at bringing them successfully to the market. And I think we all know the example from Philips. I think they've had great innovations. I think it was in the 80s and the 90s with the VHS, and so they had superior, or there was the V2000. That was their system. Yeah, it's a long time ago. But I think that's a great example of a company who was brilliant in innovation, but not good enough in bringing it successfully to the market. So in answer to your question, I think they go hand in hand. And whenever you think about innovation, you should already think about launching it successfully in the market, which is why the 3 methodologies we discussed in the beginning and design thinking really starts with the market, i.e. your customers or your clients, is so important. Okay. I hope this answers your question. Rien, you recognize 12 drivers for disruption. But in the benchmark, there are only 5 of them. Question, are these the biggest drivers? Yeah, I think, Rien, we can take that question. That becomes a bit a technical one. If that's okay with you, we'll answer it offline. There are 12 in the benchmark, but I realize no, there are 12 in the benchmark. But we can take that one offline. Okay. Then the next one from John. Can you give some examples of good KPIs for controlling of the innovation process? Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think well, then the standard answer would be that all depends, of course. So I'm not sure what you mean by controlling, but if controlling would mean, managing your innovation funnel against the initial targets. I think basically what you can think of is managing, I think there are sort of progress parameters that you can take. So are
the projects that we are running progressing against the initial targets that we've set in terms of deadlines. So that I think that's a key one to already start with. I think you should also look at if you have a stage gating approach in your business, and many companies have, by the way. I think it's very good to look at the success rate at each stage gate. So are innovations indeed going through that funnel, and do we have enough ideas coming in? Because not every idea that goes in your funnel will reach the end. So I think that's also a metric for, well, I wouldn't say controlling, but at least managing your innovation funnel, because if you don't put enough in, you won't get the result at the end. And then another one is obviously around what are the objectives that you try to achieve? So if innovation, for example, is aimed at reducing your cost, or then you can, for example, look at the bill of materials that in the end applies for the new products, for example. So I think you can go many ways with this thing. In the end, I think it will be a combination of managing on progress, managing on stage gates, but also managing on actual business KPIs. And there you get to the point of defining business cases for your innovation projects. Because if you define them upfront very clearly, then, for example, you know how much sales you actually expect to have with these products, against which sales prices, against which cost prices, and that is then something you can manage later on. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, there's a question from Paulus. I like the diversity you mentioned, like hipsters, hacksters, hustlers. Are these roles in primary process, or are these separate functions? Can you give some examples?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they are separate functions. I think it's more the type of people that you have in your company and working in your innovation process. And I think the basic message that we wanted to get across is that you actually need these three types of roles, and they can work in product management, they can work in sales, they could even work in finance for that matter. It's basically about thinking about, do we have these kind of roles? Do we have people who are creative? Do we have people who can actually make it happen? And do we also have people who know how to sell it? And then we don't need to forget the helpers, of course. That's the fourth category.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and Anke, you stated the business case is very important as a base for every innovation project. A traditional financial business case is quite hard. If you are in innovation is in the field of sustainability, any experience or tips?
Yeah, then, well, I would say in the end, developing sustainability would also need to contribute to, a bottom line result, because I think there is a higher objective for doing that, other than improving the world, you could say. So maybe, for projects focusing on sustainability, you could also, in the end, define a more financial parameter. But I think, and then, of course, sustainability can go many ways. You can think about the environmental impact. You can look at your diversity or your social engagement. And I think there are a lot of frameworks available that actually help you to define, other KPIs than financial KPIs for these projects. And I think that the basic message is, whether it's a financial business case or a sustainability business case, you need to think upfront of what you want to achieve and how much you are willing to invest to get to that objective. So I think it's a broad question, Anke. Sorry for not answering it very specifically. But I think, one, you could maybe still think of some financial parameters. And in addition to that, I would definitely think it would be possible to define other KPIs as well.
Okay. Oh, Rien already found his answer.
Okay, great, Rien. Thank you.
That's good news. There are no more questions.
One of Paul, who said, have you been recording the webinar?
Yes.
So I can have some of my colleagues watch it as well. I think the answer to that...
Yeah, I answered that one in the chat box already.
Okay, great.
There will be a link you will receive an email automatically from the system directly after this webinar with a link in it, and you can share that with your colleagues. Otherwise, drop me a note if you are not receiving that email. I'm more than happy then to send you a new one. So let me check. Yeah, there is one more question coming in. Let me. Do you find it relevant to have ambassadors coming from several trades to relay innovation?
Yeah, and if we say trades, you mean different functions of the business? So different functional backgrounds? Yeah, functions. Okay, thank you for that. Yes, very much so. That will be the short answer. I think it's really crucial to have multidisciplinary teams in your innovation. That's one of the things we've been doing at BDR as well, where obviously, it starts with sales and product management who are in daily contact with their customers. But in the end, we all know that if, the product, is to be successful, you also need the people from supply chain, reaching out to the suppliers. You need the people from manufacturing to make sure that you can actually produce it for the cost price that you hope you can produce it. You need the people from service who make sure that once the products are launched in the market, they are actually serviceable, and that your whole distribution chain is well trained, for example. And involving them at an early stage already can really help you to avoid a lot of mistakes later on down the road when you've already made big investments and it's very costly to change them again. So yes, I would definitely work in multidisciplinary teams at a very early stage of the project already. And it's also good fun. You always get to better outcomes in the end. So.
Okay, there are no more questions, Marc. So what we can do then, we will close off this webinar for today. I promise you a little surprise. What we would like to do is, we talked about the Innovation Readiness Benchmark today. Please go to the website and start the benchmark yourself just to see how you're performing. And within the first 5 people who sign in and do the survey, we will send you a free copy of the book there. So make use of that.
And you will get a report with your benchmark assessment.
Absolutely.
And that applies for everyone, by the way.
Okay, handout is available. I already said that. Yeah, we are finishing right now a brand new innovation playbook, and that will be available later this week. And if you allow me, I will send you a free copy to your email address as well. It's again a lot of information about innovation and how you can create your own innovation journey. So really worthwhile reading that. And again, if you have any questions or feedback out of this webinar, please drop us a note by mail or via a connection via LinkedIn. That's good as well. And that brings me to the end of the webinar.
Thanks for attending.
Thanks for attending, and stay safe. Goodbye.